Hello, peeps and peepettes, and welcome to another edition of Spec Commentaries. I am your host, Spec Son, and this is going to be kind of unique. It's the first Spec Commentaries edition, or so-called volume of Spec Commentaries that I'm going to do that has nothing really to do with professional wrestling. And it's going to be kind of unique that I did get this request, so I'm definitely going to go out there and share my thoughts on this topic, as you can see on the marquee. And it has to do with Charlie Weis, the famed offensive coordinator of the NFL and / college football. And I'm going to discuss his newest job that he has decided to partake upon, and that is offensive coordinator of the Florida Gators of the Southeastern Conference in college football. And, that's it hasn't really been a huge topic of discussion, but it has, it's been your occasional water cooler kind of like conversation that many people who like the game will discuss here or there, but it's not something that they're going to really dwell upon unless you're a specific fan of a particular organization that Charlie Weis was probably a part of in some form or fashion. But for those who do not know Charlie Weis, well, as I mentioned before, he's a famed offensive coordinator who was the offensive coordinator for those awesome Patriots teams during the previous decade when they won those Super Bowls, those 3 Super Bowls under Bill Belichick and Romeo Cornell, who was the defensive coordinator at the time, and Belichick was and still is the head coach of the football team. And several years ago, he decided to leave the Patriots and pursue other opportunities, one of which opportunity that came up was the Notre Dame position. And he became the head coach of Notre Dame when Tyrone Willingham was fired. I think unjustly, but that's neither here nor there. And he took over the team when Brady Quinn was the starter. And he continued on and on until a couple of seasons ago when he was fired from that position, and then he went to the Kansas City Chiefs of the National Football League to take over as the offensive coordinator for that job. And Charlie Weis is a really, really good offensive mind in the NFL. I think he's a pro coach more so than anything else. The guy has been in college football, he's been in the NFL, but I think that the guy really picks his situations extremely well. So it really is mind-boggling to me why so many people are really, I wouldn't say up in arms, but they're a little disappointed in Charlie Weis that, he moves from job to job and that seemingly he really isn't that good of a coach. I don't think he's head coach material in college football. And many people may say, all right, if that's not the case there, then why would you think he would be a good head coach in the National Football League? And I think he has, many people were really touting him as, the next great offensive-minded head coach in the NFL. Like a Mike Martz kind of like a coach who could devise all these different offensive schemes, really good knowledge, guy who has good knowledge of the West Coast offense and other very complicated offensive schemes that would really be conducive to the pros. But if that's the case, again, how come he doesn't really succeed as a head coach in college football when you're expected, if you have that kind of knowledge offensively, you're expected to score a lot of points and really be productive. But I think there was a lot of things that were going against him in Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame as a program isn't a big-time program anymore like it was in the 80s when Lou Holtz was the coach there, or in previous years when they won national championships or ranked within the top 5 as an independent. I don't think independents really work anymore in college football, and I think he had that going against him not being in a major conference where you could compete for a conference championship, and it'll be a little bit easier path to go to the BCS national championship game. I think Charlie Weis had that going against him. I don't think he had the best teams in the world as well. He had a lot of good talent, but I don't think they really had a good mesh of talent that was conducive to win your standard 12 or 13 games, it seems like, these days in order to at least play for the national championship. especially even as an independent, because there's so much that has to go right for you. But in terms of being an NFL mind, I think Charlie Weis is an NFL style quarterback. Style coach in the NFL. I think that the best thing he should have done was probably take a job as a head coach, because there was many teams that were counting for his services right after, I believe it was the third Super Bowl run for the Patriots, and he left to go to Notre Dame. So it kind of caught a little bit, some people off guard that he would accept such a position in college football so quickly after he left college football and went to the NFL to become the offensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs. That team thought they made the playoffs for the first time, I believe, since 2003. They hadn't won a playoff game, I believe, since 96. So, it was a really, really good job that he did with Matt Castle and company. But, so for him to take this Florida job, I think it shows how much he probably misses the college game. And it also shows you how lucrative some of these offensive coordinator-like position jobs are in college football for an NFL ready-made guy to, seemingly go right back into the college ranks. But he's going to the SEC, and the SEC is such a powerhouse conference. 5 straight BCS national championships. Auburn recently wins the SEC championship. This is the second time in a row that the SEC West has come away with the crown. Florida had done it as SEC champs too. And, the conference is just very, very loaded. And now with Urban Meyer leaving and the new coach who was the, I believe, defensive coordinator, of the Texas, and his name escapes me right now, but he's now the head coach of the Florida Gators, takes over Urban Meyer's position, and now Charlie Weis comes in. I think this helps the Florida Gators in 3 ways. 1, recruiting. I know the recruiting season is kind of almost over with right now. They're wrapping it up. However, I will say this right now. Charlie Weis is somebody who's been at the main stage before, the big stage. He's a guy who's been in the NFL for so many years. You'll go into a recruit's house or wherever it is that he may greet him and show him those 3 Super Bowl rings. So that alone in itself is enough for a recruit to actually consider the University of Florida. The second way it helps them, of course, on the field with a lot of their players. Charlie Weis is a really good offensive mind, as I stated before here, and he can institute several pro-style offenses in the SEC. And as I mentioned, SEC is really, really big in terms of defense. Just imagine what kind of edge Florida would have within the next 2 or 3 years if Charlie Weis remained with the program if they built up a pretty good pro-style offense to go with. I know Urban Meyer had some decent ones, but he really didn't have as much. He relied heavily on the option, especially with Tim Tebow. And I don't think he had a kind of like a West Coast feel-like offense that Charlie Weis could implement there. Dealing with the short intermediate passes, how to come back the blitz, a lot of the side blitzes that, you can actually, prevent by a lot of slant routes and a lot of slant passes, 5-10 yards. I mean, you see the Patriots still have the same offensive philosophy, and that's why they're so successful and why it's so hard to get to Brady, because he gets rid of the ball so quick and he's so mobile. I think that Charlie Weis can really do a really good job with a lot of the quarterbacks in Florida if he institutes that same kind of offensive scheme. And the third thing that helps publicity for Florida. Florida already has the moniker of being a really big-time program. You lose Urban Meyer, but you bring in a big name in Charlie Weis as a side addition to the head coach that you're already going to bring in there. It's extra publicity, more television time that they're going to probably be getting. It's a big win. And I don't think it's going to pay off big dividends on this coming season, because I still think the South Carolina Gamecocks, who several people are not discussing right now, I know they're my favorite team and all, but they have pretty much all of their core coming back. And it looks like they're going to make another big run with Garcia coming back as the starting quarterback. You got Lattimore, and you got so many other big time talents that are coming back as well. But it just means that the SEC is getting bigger, it is getting better, and that's really, really a scary thing to think of. But I just wanted to respond to that question about Charlie Weis, and I brought it up here as my first non-wrestling topic here on Spec Commentaries. I hope you guys enjoyed it. just send in your suggestions and all any suggestions that you had you want me to discuss on the show. I'm definitely going to do that, whether it be wrestling related or non-wrestling related in terms of sports. I just want to keep it on the sports kind of like theme here. But yeah, I enjoy talking about something other than pro wrestling for a change. Charlie Weis going to the University of Florida to be the offensive coordinator there. It should be very, very interesting this coming fall in 2011 to see what Charlie Weis and the Florida Gators are going to do since Urban Meyer has left the program. So without further ado, peeps and peepettes, thanks for tuning in to Spec Commentaries, and hope you enjoyed this edition. And the next volume is going to be just as stellar. Have a good one, peeps and peepettes, and I'll check you out next time.